Week 6 is officially in the books. We are going to break down players that are on the rise and players that are on the decline after Week 6 of NFL action. Welcome into today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas Wenzel, Cameron Lawrence, Tyler Plath are all hanging out with you tonight. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel already, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications so you know when all of our new episodes are up, all of our new videos are up. And hey, and if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, thanks so much for tuning in. Again, make sure you subscribe over there, turn on those notifications. You'll get alerted when all of our new episodes go up as soon as they come up. Fellas, how are we feeling after week 6?
Decent.
Kind of sad. There have been so many injuries to so many good players that it's just sad. It's just sad.
It is sad. I would agree with sad. Now, we won't talk about injured players who are on the decline as we talk about trending or ending on today's episode, but you're right. There are a lot of injuries that have occurred over the last 2 weeks. Some of that has helped some of our trending players, but again, obviously you'll get alerted on those. We won't keep track of them in our ending players, but yeah, sad is an appropriate word. We're looking on to better things though, as the bipocalypse, hopefully. Hopefully you aren't impacted by the bipocalypse in week 7. There are a lot of teams on bye, but we'll discuss who is trending, who is ending going into week 7 with a multitude of teams going on bye. Let's not keep people waiting. Let's dive on. So I've never had to do an intro for trending or ending because that is a new twist we are bringing on this episode. Typically, we do our top 10 takeaways from the previous week, but we're deciding to shake it up a little bit because sometimes we get really positive in the takeaways and it seems like we don't get enough negative and not as much room for like, oh, I agree or I disagree. Like it's pretty much us just telling you what the takeaways are. We wanted to create something a little bit more engaging. So instead, we're going to talk about 6 players that are trending and 6 players that are ending after week 6 of NFL action. So you get 12 players total. We each have 2 that are trending, 2 that are ending. And we'll do this round robin again. We'll touch on the positives first. We'll touch on the trending. And Cameron, who is the first player that you believe is trending after week 6?
After week 6, it's been over the last 3 weeks, really. It's Alvin Kamara. He's seen a pretty impressive snap share, 75%, 63%, 80%. Over his last 3 games. He is averaging 24 touches total. That's between both receptions and rush attempts, 80-plus yards in all 3 games, or he's averaging 80-plus yards, and he's averaging about 19 fantasy points with only 1 touchdown so far. He is also averaging less than 4 yards per carry, and the crazy one, on 23 receptions, he's averaging less than 4 yards per reception. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody averaging less than 4 yards per reception on over 20 receptions. That's just insane to me. His next 4 games, he does get to play Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Chicago, and Minnesota. So a pretty favorable pretty favorable matchups coming up. But the one negative for Alvin Kamara is that Jamal Williams is coming back off of IR either this week or next week. They are eyeing. Kendre Miller, we were a little worried about at first, but he had 1 game with 12 touches. Otherwise, he has been non-existent. But Jamal Williams will have a bigger impact on Alvin Kamara. And I am a little interested in what you guys think that impact is going to be.
Here's the thing. I don't think Alvin Kamara sees 22 rushing attempts and 19 rushing attempts. I think those come down. Thus, his receiving yards comes down. However, you look at my goodness, his passing game usage is absolutely insane. Obviously, you had the 13 for 33 in his first game back. Then he dipped 3 receptions on 3 targets. But he's back up again. 8 targets, 7 receptions on those targets. Again, only 36 yards, but you're talking in PPR formats. 7 fantasy points is over halfway to a top 24 finish most weeks this year. All Alvin Kamara needs to do is, again, let's say he does go 6 for 30 is an average week for Alvin Kamara going forward. That's 9 points. You only need 30 rushing yards out of him for 12 fantasy points each week. And that has been right around the threshold of a top 24 running back each week. So I think we see more of a, 11 for 51 kind of Alvin Kamara in future weeks. but it might not matter if he's drawing all these targets. And I don't think Jamal Williams is going to take those away from him.
I'm still trying to figure out this Saints offense, honestly, because it was not a couple of weeks ago that I was saying like Derek Carr's shoulder injury is going to severely impact everybody. And sure enough, what happened? Alvin Kamara got 13 targets. But now that seems like Derek Carr is okay. Now we're going back to Chris Olave, MT, and Rashid Shaheed is somehow a thing. He's a deeper league kind of flex player. I honestly just kind of need to sit down and go, okay, what is this offense going to be moving forward? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know. It changes every single week, it feels like.
Yeah, the thing that worries me about Kamara moving forward is I don't think he's going to score many touchdowns this season. So obviously the receiving work needs to be there. And if you see a dip week like we saw, 2 weeks ago, and he doesn't score a touchdown, we're looking at, an 8-point fantasy week. But at the same time, if that's his floor moving forward, and we're talking about 12 to 15 points every single week for a guy you probably drafted in the 9th, 10th round because of suspension worries, depending on when you drafted,
Depending on when you drafted, yeah.
You got to be feeling pretty good about him as your running back, at least your running back 2 moving forward. And if you were more of a 0 RB kind of person, he could definitely, slide into that a 0 RB running back 1 spot.
Yeah, so that's the thing. You brought up the touchdown. So that's why I'm really not all that concerned for Alvin Kamara going forward. I think, look, RB9, RB7, RB10 in PPR formats over the last 3 weeks. I think that, that's probably closer to all of a sudden we look at the RB15 to RB20 range probably moving forward. Yeah. But again, that's only impacted because he's not going to see 19 plus rushing opportunities in those games when Jamal Williams comes back. He only has 1 touchdown. Like that, it's not like you've been banking on touchdowns. No. Like those aren't just going to evaporate because there's only 1. They don't exist in the first place. So that's why going forward, and you name Jacksonville, Indy, Chicago, Minnesota. Even looking at the fantasy playoffs, you get Carolina, you get the Giants, you get the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, that Alvin Kamara, going forward, top 15 back rest of season, if you're asking me, he's got plenty of great matchups. And if he's going to stay this involved in the receiving game, he's not going to have a hard time giving you top 15 finishes every week.
Yeah.
I will also say this, though, too, to be a little more optimistic on Alvin Kamara, because I'm realizing my previous comments threw some shade on this New Orleans team. But at the end of the year, I'm going to have some serious questions if the Saints use Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson at a similar pace, similar rate, or more than Alvin Kamara. It really feels like the Saints just need to get the ball to Chris Olave, get the ball to Alvin Kamara. Anyway, anyhow, just get those 2 the ball, and good things usually happen. So that with the schedule, Alvin Kamara is surely going to continue producing.
Speaking of players who they need to get the ball into their hands because good things happen when the ball gets into their hands. Tyler, I'll kick it over to you for your first trending player. He's flexing because I know you've been waiting for this one. Your first trending player after week 6, Ty.
Is the guy that you guys slandered on on whatever episode it was. Just because Ty's not here, we can finally talk about this guy and keep it real. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you guys. Drake London league winner, baby. I'm kidding. Okay, let's get real for a second though. I just need to get hyped because Drake London. I have died on that hill so many times. You're
still gonna die on that
hill. I'm still climbing up this hill. Okay, and I planted my flag on Drake London at the beginning of the season, and now it's finally turning around. He now has 3 finishes inside the top 20, and he has 4 inside the top 30. And we have gone from asking the question, is he a flex player this week, to he is a for sure low-end wide receiver to high-end flex with room to get better. In all of his fantasy relevant finishes, he has at least 73 air yards per game. He has a 34% air yard share. He has a 25% target share, and he's targeted on 30% of 3rd and 4th down. So there is a preference from Desmond Ridder on who the ball is going to on those downs. On top of that, Drake London has been the wide receiver 10 since week 4. Okay. The the question mark on Drake London, in my opinion, and this is probably going to come off a little biased, I think the question mark has been lifted off of Drake London at this point. And I still need to determine if this truly, like, I think the biggest concern for Drake London was it's Desmond Ridder. And Arthur Smith had shown in the first couple of games, like, he doesn't really want to throw Desmond Ridder into the fire necessarily. But I think Arthur Smith is also realizing, like, I kind of have to. Like, I don't really have any other choice. So, look, Drake London is on an absolute tear right now, and I could not be any happier as a Drake London stan.
I don't know. I still don't know how I feel on Drake London. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not sold after these last 2 weeks.
Geez.
No. Look, we've played this game before. Look at the numbers. They're promising. They're encouraging. And you want to know what happens then? Arthur Smith says, oh, let me remind you of who I am really quick. So, look, and like you even look at the matchups, Tampa Bay, Tennessee, Minnesota, Arizona before the bye. Like, I think you can ride Drake London into the bye. I'll ride with you on that. As long as Arthur Smith is still their head coach, though, I'm terrified to still throw Drake London into my lineup, despite how good he's been. Desmond Ridder threw the ball 47 times this last week and only completed 28 passes. That's not exactly a quarterback I still want throwing my wide receiver the ball. So do I hope Arthur Smith has finally turned a new leaf and has said, you know what, when I get this guy Drake London the ball, when I throw the ball to Kyle Pitts, you know what, maybe good things do I hope he's turned a new leaf? No, because Arthur Smith still is exactly who he says he is. I still believe he's going to run the crap out of the football eventually. I'm more pessimistic, but that's because this is a fool me once, shame on Arthur Smith thing. Now, fool me twice, that's all on me. So I'm not ready to be there yet. I need to see it for more than 2 games.
So for me, I feel the way you feel about Kyle Pitts. I am more in on Drake London with Tyler at this point. 8 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets, 12 targets. You know, that's a since that week 1, that's pretty big. He's top 10 in red zone targets as well. He's a guy, when they get to the end zone, they're either running it in or throwing it to Drake London. That's kind of the way their game.
Pitts scored last week.
Okay, yeah. Even a blind scroll finds an action once in a while. Like, yeah, he's gonna have a touchdown here and there. But Drake London has seen 7 red zone targets so far. He scored twice. You know, the last 2 games, 9 targets, 12 targets. Like you said, fantastic schedule coming forward. I'm buying in on Drake London because if there's anyone they're throwing the ball to, it is Drake London over Kyle Pitts.
I as long as Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith are at the help, Drake London just isn't a guy I want to push my chips on. Push my chips in on. Like, I openly admit he's probably going to be great the next 4 weeks. But do I really want to look at New Orleans with Marshawn Lattimore? Do I want to look at the Jets with Sauce Gardner back? Carolina, who you know Arthur Smith is just going to feed Bijan Robinson to no world's end against. You get Indianapolis, Chicago, 16-17. But by that point, like, I don't know. We're projecting really far out there. I'm holding back optimism. That's how I'll end it, because I think, Ty, I sound a little bit like you right now with the Saints of who's it going to be. I'm holding back optimism because I don't want, if I get fooled again, that's all on me. And it's only been 2 weeks. I need to see Drake London be a consistent piece of this offense and for Arthur Smith to not change his mind on that. That's where I lie.
The one thing that I've got that can at least, because Kyle Pitts has had a resurgence the last couple of weeks. That is also because I shouldn't say it because, but Kyle Pitts' ADOT right now is at 12 yards, which, like, sounds crazy for a guy that has the tight end label on him. He's really being used as a wide receiver at this point. Drake London, though, his ADOT is 11 yards. So there is a clear, like, game plan. You know, they want to use Drake London not as much downfield. So, yeah, that kind of caps the big playability. But, like, that means that Desmond Ridder is going to have to find either Drake London, and I can't believe I'm going to say this guy's name, or Jonnu Smith. Like that's really what it's coming down to for Atlanta. And I really, because I share the same hope with you of like, I really hope Arthur Smith realizes like, oh wait, I drafted Drake London in the top 10 in the NFL draft. He has really good athleticism for his size. Like I should be utilizing that. And he has the past couple weeks, but
is that what Arthur Smith sounds like?
I'm assuming. Arthur, you didn't deserve that. My bad.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. If we go back to not targeting, or we're only giving Drake London one target a game, then yes, I will keep using that voice. But until then, Drake London, this Drake London stand is very, very happy.
You can be happy. I'm happy that you're happy. You've deserved this for Drake London. You have deserved this for Drake London. I am just telling you, I am holding back optimism. But you go crazy. Go crazy. I'm happy for you, Ty. I'm really happy for you. Let's move on to third player that's trending. I'm here to tell you right now, your buy low window on Chris Olave, it's gone. See ya, bye. Kiss it goodbye. Because Chris Olave is back. All right. He had 10 targets this past week. That is the fourth time this year Chris Olave has had 10 or more targets in a game, which is significant. He caught 7 of them for 96 against Houston. Only the wide receiver 16 on the week, but considering that volume without a touchdown, it was really, really nice to see Chris Olave get that volume again, get that yardage again, and put up a nice, relevant fantasy week. And now I'm going to break into like, oh, the metrics have always been there for Chris Olave, but part of me is like, I believe in the Saints offense more than I do the Atlanta Falcons offense. But again, Chris Olave, top 10 in targets this year. He's been getting the volume. He is first in deep targets. He is 10th in air yard share, second in air yard share. Second in total air yards, first in unrealized air yards, which makes sense because he's also been first in deep targets this year. So he's still, as everybody predicted this offseason, Chris Olave is going to get those big downfield targets. And obviously Derek Carr having issues with that shoulder, looking like it might be starting to heal up a little bit. So I'm very optimistic for Chris Olave coming up. You look at his next 4 matchups before the bye too: Jacksonville, Indy, Chicago, Minnesota. I love all those matchups for Chris Olave. So my question is, if the buy low window is truly closed on Chris Olave, he is the wide receiver what the rest of the season? I'll let you two answer that.
I think he's right around top 10, top 12. We're talking about it, like you said, 4 games with 10 plus targets. The reason he is not a top 12 guy right now is he only has 1 touchdown on the year. That's the biggest thing right now with Chris Olave is, like you said, he's getting the deep targets. He's getting, just targets in general. He's getting the yards, but he just hasn't scored yet. And then you mix in the fact that Derek Carr was hampered with that shoulder injury for a little bit of time, and then a great schedule coming up. I got him as probably a top 10 wide receiver, right around that fringe top 10 guy.
I put him somewhere between 12 and 15, like that low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2. I'm going to struggle some weeks to put him in the top 10. There will be some weeks where I do, just based on the matchup and stuff. It ultimately just comes down to Derek Carr. And so far this year, they've been spreading the ball around to MT, to Rashid Shaheed. Like, I just want the Saints to make Chris Olave like this guy that averages like 12 targets a game. Like,
right.
That's all I ask. And I don't think that's a lot, but that should just show you like why I'm not an NFL coach or anything, because I'm asking a guy to get targeted 12 times a game. But that would be what I need to start considering Chris Olave to be top 10, and then, further discussion for top 5, whatnot. But I'll comfortably put him 12 to 15.
Yeah. If Olave averages 10 targets a game the rest of the season, I'm very comfortable putting him at wide receiver 12. For now, I think I'm looking at the 15-16 range, because I think we are going to see a lot of this. The 7 for 85, and if he adds a score, that's icing on the cake. I think that's what we're going to get a lot of the rest of the season. But that's great compared to what he had been getting the previous weeks with only 5-6 targets, very poor yardage, only 1 reception and a touchdown, right? Like, Chris Olave is back. He's on the upswing. I think this is a guy you should be targeting as a top 15 guy the rest of the season. And hopefully you bought in on that in the last week. I know I took advantage of that right before the action on Sunday, and I finally got a few more shares of Chris Olave in my league. So I'm very encouraged for him, and I think he is on the upswing here. going into the latter half of the season.
Want to give a quick shout out to Hayden Winks, friend of the pod, and Underdog Fantasy. He charts like fantasy usage by position, and sometimes we'll dive into the players. He dived into Chris Olave, and he said that he's been at least the wide receiver 19 in usage over the last month going into week 6. So there is volume there to support top 15 upside. If that gets better, then we're pushing top 10. But again, we're comfortably putting him somewhere between 12, 15, somewhere in there.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with some more trending and then ending players, right after a quick break. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back, and we are going to continue talking about 3 more trending players. We'll quickly get into some 6 ending players to wrap out the show. We'll keep it moving here. But Cameron, your second trending player after week 6.
It's Jaylen Waddle, and I think he's in a similar tier, at least preseason, to where Chris Olave was. Back-to-back top 20 weeks now in weeks 5 and 6. He was coming off that injury. Before that, he was week 5 was five receptions on 10 targets for 35 yards and a touchdown. This last week, 7 receptions on 9 targets for 51 yards and a touchdown. The thing that's different about Jaylen Waddle right now, especially compared to last year, since he's returned from the injury in the 3 weeks he's returned, he's seen only 8.3 yards per reception. Now, reminder, he saw 19.1 yards per reception last season. So that was a big reason he was able to finish top 10 despite only seeing 70 receptions on the season. He is the wide receiver 16 and does have the lowest yards per reception out of all top 25 wide receivers in the last 3 weeks. So he's wide receiver 16 over the last 3 weeks. That's how I should have phrased it.
Right.
Right now, he does have the same amount of targets as Tyreek and only 1 less reception. But Tyreek has 402 receiving yards to Waddle's 132. Waddle also only has 1 play over 20 yards. So for me, moving forward on Waddle, it's good to see the volume starting to return. It's good to see them using him in the red zone. But if I'm going to really buy back on Waddle the same way I am with Olave, I want to see that yards per reception start to come up as well. I want to see these big plays come again because that's what he feasted on, in this last year. And that's really what this Dolphins team is all about. Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill. Like, this is what this team does. So I'm hoping that Waddle kind of catches on to that if I am a Waddle manager. But I really think, kind of like Chris Olave, you're not going to be able to buy low on Jaylen Waddle anymore moving forward.
Yeah, his yards per target too really gone down. 9.2 yards per target in week 4, 3.5, 5.67 last week in week 6. And he's been held to under 52 receiving yards, in each of those games. I'm encouraged by the 10 targets, 9 targets. And again, the 2 touchdowns have kind of been his saving grace. But if he's getting this volume, all he needs to do is get back to the, again, 15 yards of reception, 19 and a half yards. I was looking at yards per target, 19 and a half yards of reception, 21 and a half yards of reception that he was at in weeks 1 and 2. You get that back with the volume and it won't stay at 19 and a half. But if we get back up to 15, 16, that's tremendous, right? He was averaging 18.1 last year. And even if we can get back to 15, 16, that'll be tremendous for his value moving forward. Let's move on. We'll keep it moving because I think we all agree. The buy low window it's not necessarily closed on Waddle, but it's not necessarily, you can't really buy him after an 18 fantasy point week. Like, he's back to market value. That's probably the best way to put it. Ty, I think a guy who's definitely below market value right now that I think you could take advantage of, because I don't think a lot of people would call this guy trending, but sneakily, I think he is. I'll let you explain in your second trending player after week 6.
Yeah, he's not trending based on fantasy points, but he's trending based on the underlying metrics.
Right.
Jackson Smith-Njigba has kind of been the most disappointing rookie this year. I'm not going to start naming off rookies and trying to compare them, but he has not been seeing the field a whole lot this year, and that's kind of a weird thing. Yes, we know that Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are really, really good at the football, so it was going to be hard for him to like overtake them. But
good at the football.
Yeah, well, that's a those that are listening, you know that's a Pat McAfee thing. That's not me just making
it's a
Pat McAfee thing. I promise you. Anyway, back to Jackson Smith-Njigba because we've been taking way too long in this episode already. So, Seattle goes on bye in week 5, and the last 2 weeks going into the bye, their snap percentages. Lockett was at 81% in week 3, Metcalf 72, JSN was at 44. Week 4, Lockett was at 69%. Lockett 69%, Metcalf 71%, and JSN 53%. I'm pretty sure Lockett got injured in that game. I don't remember clearly, but in week 6, the first game after the bye, Lockett was at 77%, Metcalf was at 78%, JSN was at 72%. There was a massive uptick in at least just snap percentage after the bye week. The volume isn't there just yet. He only had 5 targets. Lockett had 8 and Metcalf had 10 targets. So it's not there just yet, but at least he's getting on the field. And in the process of seeing someone start producing in fantasy, you need to get on the field first. So I think there's optimism now for JSN that really was depleting before the bye week. And I think the other issue too with Seattle, I just looked this up and I'm kind of dumbfounded by this. The Seahawks as a team have the 4th lowest ADOT on the year, or so far this year. The only teams that have worse than them, Cincinnati, Carolina, and the Giants. They need to start getting the ball downfield a little bit more. And I think part of that is due to their offensive line not really being super great this year so far, but they need to get the ball downfield, especially when there's a guy like JSN who feasts from the slot and in that kind of short to intermediate range. You've got defenders all around there just because your team is not pushing the ball downfield. So as I said at the very beginning, JSN finally got to see the field. That's the first step to at least producing more fantasy relevant numbers than we have seen the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, let me remind everybody at home that Jackson Smith-Njigba was indeed the best wide receiver in this draft class. He just got drafted to a crowded wide receiver room. He wasn't going to work his way onto the field immediately to make a massive impact. Like, would we have liked to have seen that from Jamar Chase? Yes, of course we would have. Or would we have liked to have seen that similar to Jamar Chase? Yes, of course. But that's just not going to be the case. Justin Jefferson is a great example of this. What, it took him 6 weeks to fully get on the field and make an impact?
3.
Was it only 3?
Yeah.
I thought it was, okay.
But I mean, the point still stands though. The first 3 weeks.
The point still stands. Yeah. And that wide receiver room was not as crowded as the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver room.
No,
because you have Tyler Lockett, who's been reliable for multiple years now. You have DK Metcalf, who is frankly like should be just entering his prime. And now you have Jackson Smith-Njigba, who the best talented wide receiver in his class entering that wide receiver room. I think he's one where I got hammered pretty hard for telling people who are 5-0 to go out and stack the top half of their teams and then take shots on guys like JSN later. Like, I'm not taking a shot on JSN because he's going to be good next week. I'm taking a shot on JSN because holy crap, did you even mention his playoff schedule by the time he is fully integrated into this offense? Let me pull it up real quick because I had it. I looked at it and I was dumbfounded.
Philly, Tennessee, Pitt.
Ooh.
And I absolutely love that. And absolutely you get Baltimore, Washington, Los Angeles before that too, San Francisco in week 12, who's been giving up points to wide receivers again in week 14. I mean, it's back half of the season loaded perfect opportunity for JSN to get on the field more and take advantage of it.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. You also got to remember he had a broken wrist coming into this season. And now, like Ty said, coming off the bye week is a lot of times where we really see rookies get really integrated in that offense because they've seen the way, the offense is flowing. Now they get a full week to really practice, to really hammer that home. And we saw that he jumps from 53% now to 72%. He's going to be a staple of this offense moving forward. It's just how quickly is the volume going to catch up to how much they actually want to use him and get him on the field.
Right, and that's the next step is who are they going to start shifting volume from to get him more involved? And that's a mystery to be seen, but I would agree he's definitely trending up after week 6. The last trending player I want to talk about before we move on to ending players. How about Rhamondre Stevenson, baby? You both can disagree with me here. Tyler, I feel like you're the one who's going to disagree with me here, but I think your time to buy low on Rhamondre is out the window. Tyler, you might think he's a sell. I think you mentioned that in our chat earlier today, but look, he did have his second lowest rushing attempts of the season. He only had 10 rushing attempts. It was his first game where he had more than 4 yards per carry. And he saw 6 targets of them. Finally, the targets are back, right? That was tied for his season high that he had back in week 1. And I don't know what's taken the Patriots so long to realize, hey, you know what? If we want our offense to even be competent, we kind of have to give this guy Rhamondre the ball in the passing game because he's actually does good things with it. He's good with the football. But his snaps went back up to 65% this last week. And really, you look at his schedule the rest of the season, his only quote unquote like unfavorable matchups that you could pin down as of right now are Washington in week 9, maybe the Chargers in week 13, but they have some holes in their defense. They can get beat by the run. And then Kansas City in week 15. Like if Rhamondre continues to see 5-6 targets a game, he can have 12 rushing attempts for 48 yards. But if he catches 6 passes for another 30-40 yards, again, you're getting a floor of 12, 13, 14 fantasy points each week. And if he finds the end zone, it's all icing on the cake. So I'm like cautiously back in on Rhamondre. I took the chance and bought low on him this past week only because I could get a massive discount on him. And so I did. I was willing to take that shot for what I was willing to give up. But Ty, I'm curious because you mentioned you think it's time to sell on Rhamondre versus I think he's actually trending up after this week.
I think it's how you feel about Drake London is exactly how I feel about Rhamondre Stevenson. This offense.
And I'm going to respect your stance like a civilized human being.
Oh, you said I wasn't respecting your stance? Yeah, you're right. I didn't because it's Drake London, baby. It's Drake London. What's the meme? Oh, it's about the Mets. It's the Mets, baby. It's all about the Mets. It's all about Drake London, people. Okay.
I definitely did not hear Mets the first time, and I was very concerned.
Whoa.
We were talking hardcore heavy hitting. Anyways, I'll let you keep going.
I really hope that came through because then that's embarrassing. But
I heard Mets at the end, and then I got the meme. It just didn't resonate with you as it would with others who are listening to this.
We're going deep into the bag on this one, but back to Rhamondre. Before this week, his target numbers 6 in week 1, which is where we want it to be, but after that it went 3, 3, 3, and 1. I don't know if it was exact. Part of me wants to think, wow, wait a second. The Raiders are matching up Max Crosby against Vidarian Lowe. Like, we need to get the ball out quick. I don't know if that's exactly going to happen every single week. So I probably need to see another week of this from Rhamondre to finally say that he's back. But because of that, that's why I say he's kind of a sell, because like if you can get a decent return for him at this point, while there's still the potential that we could see him bottom out again, like we have the previous 3 weeks before week 6. That's why I say you could capitalize at this point and try to sell.
So back that up. Who would you go out and trade Rhamondre for? Sorry, Cam, didn't mean to cut you off. But like you say Rhamondre's a sell. Who are you going out and selling Rhamondre for? Because there's not you don't have options on the running back market right now. It's either somebody super elite or it's a ton of these, Isaiah Pacheco's, Rhamondre Stevenson's hanging out, in the RB, 10 to 20 range. Look, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started, Ty. We're not doing this. We're not. Isaiah Pacheco was the first name that came to mind of someone who's been putting up, between the 12 to 18 fantasy point range. I just don't know how much better you're going to get than that for Rhamondre.
Joe Mixon.
I was going to say Joe Mixon.
Get me out on Joe Mixon. I want nothing to do with him.
Ooh. Okay. Do you think could you package Rhamondre and go get an Alvin Kamara?
Yes. Okay. So that'd actually be a good name. I would agree with that.
You're not going and trading Aaron Jones.
I don't want anything to do with Packers running backs. I'm done with them too.
Whoa. All right.
Look,
Cav just got
tell me when Aaron Jones is gonna be back on the field healthy.
This week.
And I gotta see it. And I gotta see it.
All right. So I will say, I would trade him for Joe Mixon, because if we look at the two of them, what's the difference right now between the two, except for the fact that Joe Mixon is guaranteed 70% of snaps, whereas Rhamondre is splitting with Zeke, and Joe Mixon has an offense that is on the up and up, whereas the Patriots might have the worst offense in the NFL right now. This Patriots offense is abysmal at best, and that's what scares me about Rhamondre. I think this is for sure his ceiling. I think we could see, running back. I think he's running back 15 to 18 rest of the season. That's kind of where I got him. So I don't know if he's a buy low. I don't know if he's if you can sell him for the right thing, then you sell him. But I think he's just a middling RB2 rest of the year, and that's kind of where I have him. So I'd rather take the chance on a guy who's in the backfield by himself on a better offense.
Joe Mixon hasn't scored more than 14 fantasy points this year. He's only scored 1 touchdown in the season. He's not as well, I guess I can't say that about Rhamondre, because you're right. The Patriots offense has been pretty brutal. Sure, you can say they're the same player, but that's a lateral move. I'm not looking to move laterally from Rhamondre Stevenson. That's where I'm at. And I understand the snaps are higher, but how much higher? Like Joe Mixon, 63, 78, 75, 79, 77, 70. So you're getting 75 plus most weeks, but Joe Mixon is just, he's the definition of mid. He gets hyped up, but he's really just like a mid running back in terms of fantasy football. He's not giving you anything explosive on a given week. So why would I move laterally? That's my thought process.
One last name. And I say this more like conceptually than actually looking at the situation and going like, well, wait, this guy's out 3 more weeks and he's on IR or whatnot. But James Conner, like I would go flip Rhamondre for James Conner. Now it's not as simple as that, because again, James Conner is on IR, but like you're getting a guy in James Conner who is guaranteed snaps, guaranteed volume, matchup proof essentially for a guy like Rhamondre. That makes sense to me. But again, there's the injuries stuff that complicates it.
So the best thing you could do there is wait till James Conner's about ready to get off of IR. And if Rhamondre does indeed have, 2-3 great weeks in a row, all of a sudden, you go flip Rhamondre for James Conner plus, and you're getting a guy in James Conner who's guaranteed to give you that, right around 14, 15, 16 every week. And you're going to get an additional piece out of that too. Versus anybody like Joe Mixon, I don't think you're going to be able to get additional pieces out of. Aaron Jones, I don't think you're going to get additional pieces out of. Like, if you're going to move off of Rhamondre, you better be looking to upgrade. Or, in the case of like a James Conner, he's coming off of IR, fresh off of injury. You could get James Conner because his value would be so low and more for a guy like Rhamondre then.
Also, not one last point, not to rain on your parade, but he does check in as running back 26 in usage, according to Hayden Winks. So that changed probably this week, but just to let you know where we are at with Rhamondre and just how volatile it is.
Which is fair. Yep. Again, I figured you two would not agree with me on that, but I'm looking at the schedule. I'm looking after. Yeah, right. I'm just a big old babbling idiot here. Let's move on to ending players. Wrap up the episode. We had 20 minutes to cover 6 ending players. We'll have to budget time better in the coming weeks, but let's talk about some ending players. And frankly, I'm looking at all these names, and I really don't disagree with any of them. So, which is unfortunate. But Cam, I'll let you kick things off here because I'm sure this one is tough for you to actually have to admit.
This is very, very sad. It is Devonta Smith.
We need some like sad music.
We do. The violin.
In the background. Yeah.
This hurts. He only has 2 games with more than 5 catches so far this season. His last 4 games, 6.8 points, 14.8, 1.6, and 9.4. This is PPR points, by the way. The one good thing is he is yet to go under 5 targets so far. So at least, he's kind of had that consistent base, but 5 targets isn't exactly anything to write home about.
Not for a guy you drafted top 13.
Yes, exactly. AJ Brown's last 4 games, 9 receptions, 14 targets, 131 yards, 9 receptions, 13 targets, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 6 receptions, 8 targets on 8 targets for 127 yards, and 7 receptions on 9 targets for 131 yards. So AJ Brown's just been absolutely outstanding the last 4 games. On top of that, Dallas Goedert has seen 28 targets over the last 4 games. So he's averaging 7 targets a game. But for me, the good thing is this has all been happening, and Jalen Hurts and this offense really as a whole hasn't looked that great, right? They were 5-0, and they've been getting the job done, but they haven't looked like Philly from last year, where they could really just move the ball at will. And I think they're going to have to score some points in these next couple of weeks. They got Miami, Washington, and Dallas in their next 3 weeks before the bye, especially against Miami and Washington. They're really going to have to move the ball, and those are defenses that you can move the ball against. So those, if Devonta's going to bounce back, that's going to be when it happens. I still have faith in Devonta Smith going forward, right? He's not like a Jahan Dotson where, you're really, really getting worried about him. Devonta's still a guy I'm going to be putting in my starting lineup. He's still in an offense that I trust. If anything, I'd probably be going to try to buy low on Devonta Smith right now, but it just hasn't been pretty these last couple weeks.
I think that's a good point you bring up on Devonta, though, is if he is truly ending, he's on the downswing again. Ending doesn't mean that these dudes are screwed rest of the season. I think we should clarify that. Like, trending just rhymes with ending. It's a fun segment, okay? Don't associate ending as in we're saying Devonta Smith is going to suck the rest of this season. But I think you're right. I think there still is a case to go buy low on him, even though I am concerned about the Dallas Goedert usage because that has spiked back up, and that was my initial concern coming into the season. It didn't look to be the case over the first few weeks, but again, you look at Miami, Washington over the next 2 weeks, there's a good chance for him to bounce back in one of those games. And Devonta Smith he's done all right this year in the past against Washington. He's had a few nice games or 2 against the Commanders. So yeah, I would agree. I'd be looking to acquire Devonta Smith, but if the manager wants anything more than 75 cents on the dollar, I'm not too interested. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Your first ending player or second of the podcast after week 6.
Damien Pierce. It is time to officially wave the flag of concerned. That was poorly said, but it's not good from Damien Pierce so far this year. And to the extent of Houston, it gave more snaps to Devin Singletary in week 6, and Singletary outsnapped him 31-21. And Singletary has been getting all the 2-minute snaps, all the long down and distance snaps. Damien Pierce is really just here, Damien, here's the ball. Run with it. That's all it really is with Damien Pierce.
Is that not what all running backs do? Here's the ball. Run with it.
Well, no, because you look at the Vikings offensive line and you go, okay, here, Dalvin, you got to make something happen, right? Damien Pierce is really just see ball, take ball, run ball, right? That's
sure. See ball, run in straight line.
Yeah, run in straight line. Damien Pierce's yards per carry this year is god awful. 2.9 yards per carry. That's not good at all. Devin Singletary, on the other hand, a whole yard more, 3.9, which 4 yards is pretty standard. So he's right on the average line. 2.9, though, is not. And at some point, we have to just stop blaming the offensive line and look at Damien Pierce for what he could be doing better. 1.6 yards before contact per attempt, not great. 1.3 yards 1.3 yards after contact per attempt, that's also not very good. So for me, the Devin Singletary usage plus the efficiency are just the biggest and major reasons why he's trending down for me, and he really should be for everyone else if he hasn't been already.
It's funny because it seems like those are the 2 things that I kept screaming from the mountaintops this offseason of why I want nothing to do with Damien Pierce, because he's not going to be the pass catching back guy. He's not going to be the long and distance guy. He's just not. And the efficiency was already bad last year. And then the offensive line got worse. And then you're like, oh, wait, hold on. Wait, is Damien Pierce actually that dude? Like, can he still break all these tackles? And clearly, like, the offensive line obviously isn't doing him any favors. But I also don't think that's you could see this from a mile away coming into the season. I don't think that's an excuse. It's like, oh, just wait till they get Laramie Tunsil back. It's like, okay, yeah, that's one piece out of what, 4 other bad pieces on the offensive line. Like, I don't fully, I never understood where people were coming from on this. If you're inefficient and you don't catch passes, it's pretty tough to be fantasy relevant. Just ask Najee Harris how he's doing this year. Cam, I'll let you interject here.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, he's playing the same. He's in the same exact role now that Najee's heading into, except I think he's getting there faster because at least Najee's averaging over 4 yards per carry right now. You know, Najee's at least been okay. Pierce has been terrible in it when he gets the ball in his hands. And so, yeah, I would agree with that. I think that you should be moving off Damien Pierce pretty much at all costs right now.
I mean, it's a classic kind of boxing combo of jab, jab, hook. The first jab at him, inefficient. Second jab, no receiving work. Or I don't want to say ability. I'm not going to question a guy's ability like that. But the hook is that this offense, sure, in games they have looked good and they have put up points, but not because of the run game, because of CJ Stroud. Like, this offense going into the season was projected to just not really put up a ton of points. They could get yards, but just not a lot of points. That combo, all 3 of those things mixed together, gets us where we are right now with Damien Pierce.
Speaking of boxing, which is more effective, Damien Pierce or a Dylan Danis backhand?
Oh, Damien Pierce. I mean,
let's move on. Don't answer that. Don't answer that. If you didn't watch that, everyone's like, what the world are you talking about? These guys are idiots. Who the heck is Dylan Danis? Why are they talking about boxing? Just don't waste your time. Please don't.
Don't even Google
I can't get that man off my Twitter timeline right now.
He's getting the mute right after.
Oh yeah, 100%. Let's move on to my first ending player after week 6. Look, I think I'm resonating with this player as more of a potentially sneaky buy low option, but I'm also looking at the numbers and I'm just very confused. I don't know what to do with T. Higgins because I think we need to step back and acknowledge that he's only had 1 game over 4.1 fantasy points this year. Not great, John. Not great. I know he was injured in week 4, obviously fresh off of injury in week 6. He was a game time decision. 54% of snaps in both of those weeks. And we haven't seen him with a healthy Joe Burrow because his targets were still plenty healthy in weeks 1, 2, and 3. I feel like right now he belongs on the ending list now, because if you're a T. Higgins manager and you look at the last 3 weeks, 4 of 5 games he's played in this year, he's scored less than 4.1 fantasy points. Like that's not good. So obviously going into the week 7 bye, you can't even play him this week. Another reason why he's trending downward. He's on an absolute cold streak. So here, I'll ask this: is T. Higgins a buy low? You look at after the bye, San Francisco, Buffalo, Houston, Baltimore. I don't know. I don't mind the San Francisco matchup. I don't mind the Baltimore matchup. But then after that, you get Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Minnesota, and then Pittsburgh again, which is a great stretch to close out the season. So I don't know. What do you do with T. Higgins right now? Because you're obviously very, very disappointed if you're a T. Higgins manager. You're kind of handcuffed to him because he's too talented to sell him low. But at the same time, he hasn't done anything to prove loyalty to you yet this year.
I mean, he feels like a buy low at the right price, right? I don't think he's a guy that I'm actively going out, sending a ton of offers to go get T. Higgins right now. But at the same time, would you do Rhamondre for T. Higgins?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. If I have, so here's the deal. I know Kyron Williams was just injured, but if you have one of those sneaky waiver wire guys, like a Kyron Williams, a Jerome Ford, who else was one of those guys already this year? I'm forgetting one of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but if you have one of those guys, right, and your first 2 running backs are, an Austin Eckler, you got Austin Eckler back this week. in like a Josh Jacobs or something like that. I can't think of what situation that would be, but if Rhamondre's been kind of middling around as your running back 3, I think I'd be okay with that. But that's only if you really need the wide receiver, and I frankly wouldn't do that this week, especially for T. Higgins, who isn't going to be playing in week 7.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. He feels kind of like a hold. Like you can't sell him right now, right? Because you're going to have to sell him so low, and I don't think
70
it's worth
cents
it.
on the dollar probably.
Yeah, I just don't think that's worth it. I would probably have to say he's a buy low because I believe that this Bengals offense starts to kind of come back, and I think T. Higgins, once he gets healthy, will be good. But I just don't know how much I'm willing to pay for T. Higgins.
Name game, real quick.
All right, yes, Ty, running the
He's
name
running
game.
it.
Devonta Smith or T. Higgins?
Devonta Smith.
Why?
Better offense.
I don't know if it's necessarily the better offense. I think I've been able to I get uncertainty from both of them, but I've seen Devonta Smith excel at a higher rate than I have T. Higgins.
Yeah, Devonta's coming on with a much better season last year as well. T. Higgins was, last year for T. Higgins, we were like, oh, maybe we'll take a step forward, especially with Jamar missing time. And he just didn't, whereas Devonta Smith, led the team in receptions. So I don't think, that would be part of it for me with Devonta Smith.
If we're selling, if both of these guys at this current moment or I shouldn't say being sold, but if you can only get 75 cents on the dollar and you are the T. Higgins manager, would you flip him for Devonta Smith?
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
In a heartbeat. I would.
That's because for me, I initially, when I hear T. Higgins and Devonta Smith so far this year, I think not necessarily that they're carbon copies or 1-for-1s of each other,
but relatively the same, though.
They are relatively the same to me. So if the outlook for Devonta Smith is better than T. Higgins, go flip the two around. Or I shouldn't say go flip the two. Go trade for Devonta Smith.
I like that sentiment at least. I think it's a smart comparison there because you're right. Both can get volume. Both are relatively inconsistent in terms of their production, but again, Devonta Smith has shown me in the past, even with an elite option like AJ Brown, he can step up and take care of business. I'll talk about. Well, no, I just named my guy. I don't know why I said I'll talk about Cameron. You're going to talk about our next guy.
We get it. Yeah, you get.
I'll just keep talking. I like talking. I got a big mouth. Cameron, I'll let you name your next ending guy. Which I wish we had more time to talk about this because I came to the doc and I knew I was going to be one of the last ones to throw in my players, but I was going to put down this player and then you had already put him there. So I'm curious what you have to say about him because I think I'm going to agree with you here.
We are going from Devonta to Davante Adams. Week 3 and week 4, he was terrific. Week 3 and week 4. Week 3, 13 receptions on 20 targets for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. Right? I mean, nothing more you can ask from him there. Week 4, 8 receptions, 13 targets for 75 yards. And then the last 2 weeks, he has combined for 6 receptions on 9 targets for 74 yards, which would be his second worst game if it was just one game. That's how bad it's been over the last 2 weeks. And what's been worse, what's really the icing on the cake, right, is that Jimmy G could miss some time. He left the game in an ambulance. They're saying there's potential that he could play this week, but at the same time, he did leave the game in an ambulance. But for me, knowing Davante Adams, right, we know how good he is. We saw him last year with Jarrett Stidham. He put up, I think it was 30 fantasy points last year with him at the end of the year. He now gets Chicago, Detroit, the Giants, the Jets, which are a very tough matchup. I'll give them that, and Miami. So they're going to have to throw the ball. And for me, I look at Davante Adams as a guy that I don't think you can really buy low on Davante Adams.
No,
I think, it's like him, Stephon Diggs. They're guys where they can have these down weeks, but the name value just insulates it so much where there's never really a buy low for these guys.
Right.
And I wouldn't be selling on Davante Adams because, you're probably, if you had Davante Adams, you'll probably get people coming to you like, hey, can I come get him for 70 cents on the dollar? I wouldn't be doing that as well. So I think you just hold on to Davante Adams. I think you kind of weather, these last 2 weeks. And I believe in the talent of Davante Adams so much that even if Jimmy G does miss some time, I think he's going to be just fine.
That's and the thing is like Davante Adams is still going to be first read in that offense. Where if you do get Aiden O'Connell stepping in, let him get his feet wet, let him settle in, and Davante will probably still be the first read guy. It's not going to be pretty. Let's make that very clear right now. It already hasn't been that pretty with Jimmy Garoppolo, but like you said, I think Aiden O'Connell missing time Jimmy Garoppolo missing time and Aiden O'Connell needing to step in. I think that's icing on the cake here, and why I think nobody's going to give you 95 cents on the dollar for Davante Adams. You also have to hold on to him because he's an elite talent and going to be the number one target getter still. So I agree. He's still ending though. And I think you really do have to lower your expectations for him as long as Jimmy G is out. Ty, do you have anything you desperately need to add on there? Otherwise, let's keep it moving to chat about your second ending.
I will just say it is Brian Hoyer actually now. Did
they change
from Aiden O'Connell to Brian Hoyer?
Classic. Get another guy who's been in the Patriots Mike McDaniel system before.
Exactly.
And, there you go, Brian Hoyer.
Did you just
Shiny
say
head
Mike
Brian
McDaniel?
Hoyer?
Josh McDaniel.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels.
What did I say, Mike?
Yeah, I think you said Mike.
Oh, no wonder it sounded weird coming out.
It would be a lot better if it was Mike.
It would be a lot better if it was Mike McDaniel. You're very much correct on that. Ty, your second ending player after week 6
is a guy that we were pretty high on compared to consensus because of potential 3-down work. It's Miles Sanders. His rushing attempts last 5 games, 18, 14, 9, 13, and 7. It's dropping. And he has only 2 games where he's averaged over 3 yards a carry. Like it's not good. And on the year, he's at 3.1 yards per carry. It's not good. It's not good. And his saving grace would be the receiving game, but here's his target numbers: 6, 5, 9, 3, and 1. Also decreasing. Like it's not looking good for Miles Sanders. And I know that he's been hurt and whatnot and all that. It's not looking good for Miles Sanders at this point, regardless of his health or not. Especially when Chuba Hubbard is looking the better, more efficient back when he's putting up 4.5 yards per carry. Kind of the cherry on top, it's not the finish him sound or anything.
I got it ready.
Don't play it. No, I'm not saying
Wilson.
Well, you can determine if you play it, but it was announced the day that we recorded this on Monday that Frank Reich is handing over the play calling duties over to offensive coordinator Thomas Brown. Now, Thomas Brown comes from the Rams there, and he has, I don't think, any experience being a play caller. So I don't think there's really anything to really take away from that move other than things could just look a little bit different now. Okay. We could be seeing more Chuba Hubbard. We could be seeing some more Miles Sanders. Who knows? But the outlook for Miles Sanders is extremely, extremely dim at this point. And he might be one of those other guys that you're selling for 60 cents on the dollar. So do you really sell because there really isn't anyone else that you can go buy with Miles Sanders? Do you hold? You can't drop him because he's still a featured player, or so we think. Like, take that all to just say it's extremely dim. His outlook has a bunch of question marks written all over it. It's not looking great for Miles Sanders.
So here's the thing with his target numbers. Obviously, you brought up the encouraging target number 659. He was second amongst all running backs in targets through the first 3 weeks. Obviously, again, gets injured on the decline. Ready for where he finished on those weeks in PPR formats, might I remind you. RB22 in week 1, RB31, RB11, RB38, RB60. Again, injury in week 5. And the thing that concerns me even more is that week 5 injury was the groin. It was still the groin that was bothering him from this offseason. Now we're dealing with a shoulder. This is a different injury. And I look at the schedule, I'm like, I don't know, can I really do I really want to think, okay, you know what? He gets Houston, Indianapolis, Chicago right away after the bye. Those are pretty good matchups. And then I see Dallas, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta. Then you get Green Bay, Jacksonville, but that's a brutal stretch of 5 matchups for running backs this year. So yeah, I'd say trending, or he's ending, and I would, you know what, if he has one good game after the bye, I'd go ahead and just sell him right away.
That's what I was gonna say. If you're gonna sell him, you sell him after the bye. I would not sell him right now because you're really selling low. You're selling about as low as you can heading into the bye. I would wait. Like Lucas said, he's got good matchups coming up. Hopefully he can string, 2 running back top 20 finishes in a row. You selling a guy who's really desperate for running back. That's where I would be looking for Miles Sanders right now. But I don't think I would sell right now.
No, now is definitely not the time to go and sell Miles Sanders. Another guy I wouldn't really be trying to sell right now. You kind of missed your window to sell him too. Is Gabe Davis? He's my second ending player after this week. Look, give me a second. I'm gonna go ahead and Google search the definition of touchdown dependent.
Oh, don't do that.
Why? Why?
Just
tell me why. No. We're gonna fight over this. Ty, we've been picking a lot of fights recently, but tell me why.
Let me
Tell me why.
Let me come up with an argument first. You keep going. Let me come up with an argument.
I'll give you the argument. I will give you the argument right here because there isn't going to be one. He's only seen more than 4 targets twice this year. He's had more than 3 receptions only twice. And guess what? It was in the same games where he had more than 4 targets. He's only had 3 games with more than 60 receiving yards. And his saving grace is that he scored touchdowns in 4 straight games. Look, I don't want to take away when a guy's been successful. But again, we talk about touchdown dependency. Okay. Look, in week 3, you take away 1. He only scored 10.3 fantasy points in week 3. It would have been at 4. You bring him down from 15 to 9. Again, I hate being the guy that's like, oh, you know what? You take away when he does good and he does bad. It's like, that's a no duh argument. But you even look at those, like, just where Gabe Davis has been finishing on the season. Wide receiver 69, nice. Wide receiver 14, 45, 22, 8, 79. Like, that is still all over the place. And he scored touchdowns in 4 straight games. I want nothing to do with Gabe Davis. I'm done. I'm out. If he catches a touchdown, congratulations. I still don't know when I can play him. Go ahead. Counter that.
I can tell you when you should play Gabe Davis. When he goes up against a team that runs zone defense, zone coverage.
When the Lord Jesus tells you to. That's...
I feel God in this Chili's tonight.
There it is.
No. Again, Gabe Davis is all of his fantasy relevant finishes have been against defenses that run zone coverage at, I shouldn't say at a high rate, but majority of the time. Like this past week against New York, the Giants run man coverage a ton. Week 1, the Jets, man coverage a ton. So I don't know. That's not the end all be all by any means. But at the same time, like it does give some context as to why he's been able to produce. It's Gabe Davis. The man's middle name is volatile. Okay. Like we've known this since last year. And this may be me kind of defending my behind a little bit because I was the guy that said that Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis could both go for double-digit touchdowns.
That was 2 years ago. You got to let yourself go on that.
That was
2 years ago.
That was last year. But
really, that was last year.
That was last year.
Yeah.
Man, well, look at this idiot.
Yeah, don't listen to anything I'm saying at this point because I'm an absolute stooge.
You said it.
I said it. Again, I don't. It's not all doom and gloom for Gabe Davis. You can throw the touchdown dependent label on him, but I think it is a bit of a cop out just to go, oh look, he hasn't scored in 2 games and he's scored under 5 fantasy points in those games.
What else am I supposed to tell you?
What an impression of Lucas.
You and Arthur Smith have the same voice.
Clearly, man. I'd be making a lot more money if I were in Arthur Smith's shoes, though.
Do you really want to be in his shoes?
No, gosh, no. Well, I don't know. I'd like to have
ran or started FedEx. Yeah, I'd like to be in his shoes. I don't
I'd
care
like
what
to have
you
the
say about me.
embarrassment of riches on offense that he has, but I don't know. I digress. Here's what we're going to do, Ty. In future weeks, man, we're going to switch up Thursday's structure of episodes too. Every time we get to the Bills, we're going to do a Gabe Davis barometer each week, and you are in charge of the Gabe Davis barometer. And we're really going to judge if your theory is accurate, which I think there is some truth behind it. I will give you credit for that. But
I will tell you right now, though, don't play Gabe Davis this week going up against New England.
All right, there you go. Gabe Davis is a set this week against the New England Patriots. There you go. You heard it here.
Bomb incoming.
The Gabe Davis barometer.
I would love to be wrong.
Oh, that is it for trending and ending this week. We ran a little bit overtime, but that is okay. Anything we want to add before we close out here?
Keep fighting the good fight.
There it is. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, TikTok, and here on YouTube, where, hey, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications. Videos every single day. Multiple shorts some days as well. Make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications so you know when all of those episodes go up. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, thank you so much again for your support over there. You can subscribe, turn on those notifications, leave a nice little review as well. We like hearing from our listeners over there too. So I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter. Camlaw, FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Plath for Tyler. We will see you all later this week on the podcast. Again, we're gonna switch it up. We're gonna talk about start sit players in every single matchup. We are going to have to absolutely fly through that episode, but we'll get it done. We're switching it up. We'll see you all Thursday for that. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and deuces. That was really dramatic. We'll see you all later this week. Deuces.